me cookie at the disco. Me lost me cookie at the music. Me lost me cookie at the disco. Me want it back. Me want it back again. Hello. Welcome to not the disco, but the 4th episode of Live from Muppetland, the Muppet podcast where some episodes are interviews, some episodes we watch stuff, and some episodes are deep dives into the community that this show is a part of. I am here today with a good internet buddy of mine and a wonderful person and a great guest. Please welcome from Muppet GIF of the Day, Sam.
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
It's good to... I almost said it's good to be seen, but this is a non-visual format.
That is true.
Sam, before we start, who are you? Tell who be you? Tell us what you do.
What I do?
Yeah, like how do you exist? What is your position?
I do stuff. Are you asking like about the account or about
that actually works perfectly. We'll get into the details later. But first, how about we talk about the news?
Yeah, sure.
And cue theme. I just love that stupid Sesame Street news / theme, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a delight. There was going to be 3 news stories I wanted to talk about, but now there's 4 because of a thing that happened literally 2 hours before this podcast went live. But we'll say, I think you know what I'm talking about. Let's save that for the last, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that.
So our first news item I want to talk about, because we haven't had a podcast episode since May of 2022, which is, that's a while ago.
Yeah.
Every piece of news I want to briefly talk about is all stuff that is very random and kind of makes you want to say the name of a different Muppet fan podcast. Hubba what? So the first news is that there's going to be a Sesame Street musical.
Yeah.
Did you see this? So basically what this is this, it's not on Broadway. It's in New York. It's an off-Broadway musical. That will be composed of both classic songs from the show and a few original songs exclusive to the musical. It will feature puppets. It will feature Broadway celebrities. And if the marketing is anything to go by, at the very least, the Count, Abby, Elmo, Cookie, and Oscar will be in it, at the very least. But other than that, we don't have too much details on this. Any thoughts, Sam?
We, like you said, we don't know much about this, but I do know that the company that is partnering with Sesame Workshop to do this recently did a Winnie the Pooh musical that dealt with a lot of puppets and that sort of thing, and I haven't seen it obviously, but it's gotten great reviews. So it sounds like they have a good team behind it. So I'll be very interested to see how it turns out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am too. The Winnie the Pooh musical, again, I haven't seen it, but I have seen the puppets that they've used in it, and those puppets are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. This seems like it's gonna be a great thing for kids. I'll be in New York in September for school, so I hope to stop by and check it out. But who really knows? My other question, and this is a prediction: do you think this is Broadway people? Like, do you think this is going to be like Matt Vogel and David Rudman on stage?
That's hard to know at this point. They have been very sort of tight-lipped about that.
Yeah, very coy about the actual puppeteering of it all.
So I would love to see it, but at this point, it's just too soon to know.
Yeah, I would love to too. But I think my it's a logistic thing, right? Because like I mean,
Oh,
those
absolutely.
yeah,
They're busy people.
they're busy people. Obviously, Sesame Street I think films in the fall, if I'm not mistaken.
Typically, yeah.
Typically films in the fall, and plus all those other people, they have Muppet stuff to film. They have other things to do besides be on Broadway stages.
Yeah.
But I know I'm excited. I hope it's good. That's the other thing I have to say with most Muppet productions. I hope it's good.
That's very true.
Our
I feel
se-
the same way.
yeah, our second news story again is just the weirdest thing. The Jim Henson Company has teamed up with Coldplay to make a puppet band. Did you see this?
I did see that. I saw the clips that they did for the Tonight Show
Yep, they
where
went
they were
on.
performing with Coldplay. It's interesting. It certainly feels like something that you would expect the Jim Henson Company to do. Something completely sort of random and out there and
Yeah,
musical.
no, I think on that point, the puppets. I don't know if it's me, but they look like something out of the Jim Henson Hour. Like they reminded me of
Yeah,
that band, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
This have you? So you saw the Tonight Show stuff. Did you
Hmm.
like the song that they performed?
It was all right. It sounded like a Coldplay song, but it was Coldplay singing it, so
Yeah, because the
it's
song.
kind of what I expected going into it, knowing that.
Yeah, It's a Coldplay song. Coldplay is just has kept on cold playing. Uh, I don't know because I don't follow music all that much. I don't know if Coldplay is still very relevant or not relevant at all. um, I assume they're basically a legacy act at this point. I assume. Um, but no, I mean it's just cool to see more puppets. And
Oh, absolutely.
the names of these characters are so muppety because it's Angel Moon, right?
Hmm.
Barksman, the Wizard, and Donk.
Yes.
And before I watched the clip, I tried to guess which one was which, and I got all of
Yeah.
them. Yeah, so that's our thoughts on the Coldplay song. It's Coldplay.
Pretty much.
Okay, our next news story is something actually really cool. After after about a decade of looking and it being um, one of the biggest white whales of the lost media community, the Wicked Witch episode of Sesame Street was found last week.
Yes.
Or I
Yes, it
should say,
was.
it's online. We all knew it existed. We all knew it was in the Sesame vaults, but it had never been resurfaced publicly. And it leaked online last week.
It did indeed.
It did indeed. Did you? I did not watch it. Did you watch it?
I have seen it. Yes.
Oh, real quick, or not real quick. Take your time. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It's if you if you love vintage Sesame Street material, I mean this is it. This is A1 stuff. It's not very Muppet heavy. The only Muppets in it are Big Bird and Oscar.
Okay.
So it's mostly Maria and David and the Witch, with Big Bird there too. But if you love the kind of humor that old school Sesame Street has, and in a lot of their street stories, it's a lot of fun. And just the weirdness of them bouncing off the Wicked Witch of the West is just really fun to watch. I know it has a reputation of being very scary, and if I was 3 years old, I might be a little concerned. Seeing I probably also would have been freaked out watching The Wizard of Oz at that age. But as an adult watching, it's just a lot of fun. They're really having a lot of fun with it, and it really shows.
No, that's good to know. So it is the type of thing that you think a younger you, like a 3 or 4 year old you, definitely would have been afraid of, though.
Some parts of it, like there's one of the things in the episode is that when two people are touching the broom, the one who touched his second gets shocked.
Mm.
So they have this weird filter effect, very like video filter effect over it, and the witch screams in pain as if she's getting shocked. I could see that freaking me out as a kid,
I can see that freaking me out now.
but I I mean the special effects haven't aged particularly well, so it's kind of funny now. But as a kid, seeing that, it would probably be like kind of scary to see. But the most of it is just the witch sneaking around like, how can I get the broom? It's like
Mm.
it's a lot of it's a lot of fun. And you can tell they're having fun doing it.
It does sound a lot of fun, and I'm so. I mean, obviously it leaked, and leaks are always kind of a messy situation,
Yeah.
right? But I'm glad it's out there. I wish it was. I wish we lived in the universe where Sesame put it out on HBO Max or something.
Oh yeah, that would be preferable.
But at the very least, I'm glad it's out there because it is another like it is obviously it's a big thing for the Muppet community. This made headlines in like Variety magazine and
Oh yeah.
like this was a huge find. This had been one of the like biggest pieces of lost media in like the internet history, and for it to be found, is a big deal. And for it to be a Muppet thing is even is a crazy thing at all.
Yep.
Shall we talk about our fourth and final news story?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
So, mere about 2 hours ago, give or take, the Jim Henson Company. In fact, I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna. I hold on. I'm gonna pull it up real quick because I read because I. The Jim Henson Company tweeted this, and this is a direct quote from the Jim Henson Company's Twitter. Quote: "Big news from Thra. Behold, at Quid and at Henson Company have joined forces to bring you the Dark Crystal mintable NFT. Sign up for updates." End quote.
Yeah.
So we've been to, all right. So I don't like to curse often on this podcast, but this is bullshit. Um, we've been through this before. They announced and I think either postponed or canceled Labyrinth NFTs back in December. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and for those of you who are blissfully unaware, NFTs are basically little pictures of ugly monkeys that cause rainforests to die.
That's a very succinct way of putting it. Yes.
Yes. Um, they are
That's the best
basically,
description I've actually ever heard.
yep, that's NFTs. I mean, they're little JPEGs of art, basically, that you trade on the blockchain. What blockchain is, I honestly do not know and do not have time to explain. This is a Muppet podcast, not like every other space about crypto. Um, Spaces is a great place. It's a lot of crypto bros, though.
Yeah.
And so, basically, NFTs, lots of different companies have done them. There's Disney's done NFTs, and there's Back to the Future NFTs, and it was inevitable that the Hensons would get into it. But the thing you got to understand, the Dark Crystal is in many ways a movie about environmentalism,
Oh yeah.
and you're literally using a movie with a pro-environment message to harm the environment. Like, the only thing that I could see being worse is if you made, Fern Gully NFTs, or God forbid, Fraggle Rock NFTs.
Yeah. It
Um,
just boggles the mind that this would make it through how many levels of people okaying it to get to this point. Like
because
somebody has to have stood up and said, this isn't a good idea.
it was probably, you know what, it's probably whatever marketing firm or because here's the other thing about the Quid. Quid was a digital tradable company before NFTs. They
Mm-hmm.
did like I used to do Quid when I was like in middle school. They weren't NFTs then; they are NFTs now. And like they've been a tradable good company for like little digital knickknacks for like a decade, and the Henson Company has worked with Quid before when they weren't doing NFTs, and so it was probably just some guy at Quid. Hopefully, this was just part of a contract they already signed, and they had nothing. They had no way of preventing it. That's what I'm hoping happened. That's probably not what happened, but that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. And the general response has not been positive
Oh,
across the internet. It has been overwhelmingly not in favor of this.
no, you could write an essay about how negative the reaction has been.
Mm-hmm.
Literally every person I talked to on this website has all unanimously come out against this idea.
Yeah, as they should.
As they should. It's stupid, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they either postpone it or. I'm sorry. Can you hear that motorcycle?
Yeah,
I apologize. Living in the city can do that to you sometimes.
yeah,
Anyway, I would not be surprised if they either postpone it or decide to cancel it at some point because it was so negative, so like I haven't seen the Muppet community come together like this in like the longest time. I'm actually proud of us, if I'm being completely honest.
yeah.
I think that's enough about the NFTs, though, don't you?
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Okay. Real quick, before we get into our actual story, just want to mention that Holy Moly is still airing and nobody's watching it, just like the last month.
I would actually like to correct that record. I
Oh,
am watching Holy Moly.
are you enjoying it?
I actually am,
Oh,
and I wasn't expecting to, but I, I wish there was more Muppets, but I'm actually enjoying the show in general.
yeah, Holy Moly. Like I've said, I've described it before as Wipeout with mini golf, which I think is an accurate
Oh,
representation.
incredibly accurate.
And it's a fun show. It really is a fun show to turn on and turn off the brain and enjoy for an evening.
Yep.
It's just a shame they've used the Muppets to market this season and there's barely any Muppets.
Yeah. It almost feels like this far into the season, like they were planning on like doing like one episode with the Muppets, and someone decided to stretch it out to the entire season. So that it's like just like, well, here's like 3 minutes in this episode, here's 3 minutes in that episode. It really feels like the marketing like overhyped how much the Muppets would be a part of the show as a result of that. But
I mean, you want to talk about the marketing real quick. So 2 weeks ago, I was in a school trip to Walt Disney World, right?
mm-hmm.
And when you walk into Muppets Plaza or Muppets Court or whatever they call it, that place is wall to wall covered with posters and signs for Holy Moly.
Oh
Like
man.
you can't walk 5 feet without running into one, and I'm not even exaggerating.
Oh no, I've been there when they've been marketing other stuff like Muppets Haunted Mansion, but to see it with Holy Moly is a whole nother thing.
And last week, as was very obvious if you tuned into this Twitter account, I was in New York City all week. And right outside of the Times Square Good Morning America studio is a giant billboard of Holy Moly with giant renders of Kermit and Piggy and Fozzie and Pepe. Mind you, these are like images from like 2008
Oh, of
on a
course.
giant board with Rob Riggle and the other guy, the actual stars of the show, tiny at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've been pushing the Muppets for the marketing for this. And one more thing before we move on to the main story, Sam,
Yep.
I need you to answer the question I've asked every guest on this podcast so far, and will ask every guest until a certain thing gets announced. Who plays Jim in the biopic?
Uh well, I don't know if this would be the best choice, but this is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Okay.
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski.
Like especially in some of his more recent things where he's had the beard. Like I could
Okay.
see his him physically being able to. He's about the right height, and is the beard, but he also has from the scene when you see him in the office, he has that sort of quiet devious sense of humor to him that I could see kind of working for playing Jim, and he can also do some of the more dramatic stuff. If it's a biopic as well. So I think he has the range to do it. Of course, it comes down to can you inhabit Jim, which includes puppetry, it includes all sorts of things, but at least for what I've seen, he's the first person that comes to mind. And I know other people have said it, so I'm not just pulling this out of thin air, but I think I think it's who I would go with.
See, for the first time on this podcast, I actually have to say I agree with you because it's this. My thing with John Krasinski is really if they're doing it toward. It depends on how old Jim's supposed to be. First
That
off,
is true.
that's
Well,
the
he's older than he was on The Office now, so
right. If this was like 2008 era John Krasinski, I could say he could play younger Jim, but obviously that's 14 years ago. So yeah, I can see the looks wise. I just don't know, and I can even see like the attitude. I just don't know if he really like. It's gonna be hard for me to hear him as Jim Henson. I should say, like voice wise.
yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah,
But
but
you know,
no, I could totally.
it's been hard for anyone to find someone who sounds quite like Jim Henson, though. Has been the issue
It's
with
like
a
they.
lot of Jim Henson related projects.
It's almost like maybe they shouldn't make the movie. Oh no, no. I joke about them not making that movie, but they're gonna, and I'm gonna see it, and I'm gonna love it.
Yeah,
Even if it's bad, I'm gonna love it. Hmm. So, after 20 minutes of talking, are you ready to talk about our main story today?
I'm ready.
And
Let's
what are we
do it.
talking about? Us.
We're talking about us.
We're talking about that weird, goofy, silly, inspirational, celebrational, muppetational corner of the internet, Muppets Twitter.
Yep.
Do you remember the first time you heard the words Muppets Twitter?
I don't actually. It was probably after I started my account that I realized there was this thing called Muppets Twitter. I knew there were Muppet fans on Twitter.
Right.
I'd been one of them. And I'd follow Muppet history and Tough Pigs and all the
The
various
big
sites. But I didn't know that there was like an organized community behind it until I really started to get into it,
let's
like
use the
become
word
part of it.
very very loosely.
That's true.
we're
That is true.
but we're also all flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah,
And
that's
some of
fair.
us are wearing pants.
Uh,
So I guess just like to before we get into both of our stories with Muppets Twit and Muppets Twitter and Twitter in general, what was what was the Muppets and Henson stuff for you growing up? Like, did you get into it when you were older, or like, what's your story with that?
well, I started off as a kid watching Sesame Street and Muppet Babies back in the day, the original Muppet Babies. I remember when Jim was alive.
Oh wow,
Not very much. I was still definitely the Sesame Street age group for that period of time. But the Muppets were huge. In that era, they were everywhere. And then growing up, coming out of Sesame Street Muppet Babies into the other Muppets. Those around the time that Muppet Christmas Carol came out. A lot of the older movies were coming out on VHS and being shown on cable, all the time. Then it's Tonight, and just went from there. And then I think where it went from just being
Oh,
I'm a fan of this to being okay, I'm a big fan of this, was when I first saw the Muppet Show, which was around the year 2000. They had a I don't know if anybody remembers this. It was a TV channel that Jim Henson Company owned 50% stake of, called Odyssey.
oh my, wait, real quick. I've wanted to talk about Odyssey with somebody for years because it's so fast. Like, yeah, no, you explain it because Odyssey is wild.
Yeah, Odyssey was, well, the easiest way to explain it is it's Hallmark Network,
But with Muppets.
but with Muppets. Hallmark owned half of it, and Henson owned half of it. This was before Henson sold the Muppets to Disney. So like half of it was like Hallmark movies, just like on the Hallmark Channel today, and the other half of the programming was whatever Jim Henson Company had in the vaults. So they had the Muppet Show every night at dinner hour, and I would watch it like every night, and that's sort of how I fell in love with it all over again. I was already a teenager by that point. But they also would show Fraggle Rock, Muppet Babies,
Right. If I
all of the TV specials. I think like it was
right,
either Saturday or Sunday night they would show a different TV special every week.
real quick, I have the good old Muppet Wiki page pulled up, right?
Yep.
And this channel, mind you, aired throughout its runtime The Animal Show, Fraggle Rock Animated, The Ghost of Fafner Hall, Mother Goose Stories, Muppet Babies, The Muppet Show, Muppets Tonight, and Secret Life of Toys all throughout the day.
Yep. It was
Oh,
it was it was like a one-stop shop. Like if before there was like streaming and where you can get an entire season set on or even on DVD, this was like I can go here almost any time of day, and they're either playing a Jim Henson project or they're playing a Hallmark movie, and you hoped you hit the Jim Henson project.
because the other thing is, I'm not going to read them all, but practically, if you name a Muppet special from the 80s or 70s, it aired on Odyssey at one point.
Oh yeah.
Like everything. Hey Cinderella, Muppets Celebrate Jim Henson, Sesame Street 20 and Still Counting. Like you name it, it was on Odyssey at one point.
Oh yeah.
But
So
man,
it was a great sort of like just like immersion into everything that Jim Henson had done essentially, and
mm.
it just
And one more,
after seeing that bits and pieces over the course of my whole life and loving them, seeing them all in one place was like wow.
and one more thing. Um, Odyssey is where there was a lot of interstitials filmed for Odyssey,
There
and
was.
those you can find on the internet now. A lot of those were put on as DVD bonus features for when the Muppet
Mm-hmm.
Show box sets released, and those are where the Brian Henson Muppet Show introduction comes from.
Oh, I very fondly remember those in front of every episode every night.
Mm-hmm. So if
Tune
you own
into the show.
the old DVDs, not the DVD box set, but the old DVDs, those are on there, and you can see them online. It's that very iconic. Hello, I'm Brian Henson, and
Absolutely.
oh man, we don't talk about Odyssey Network enough.
We don't.
All right, well, continue. Sorry about that. Side tangent.
Oh, no problem. So that's when I sort of became, went from being a fan to being, a super fan, and and then it's sort of like, and then that was a few years. Then it sort of faded a little, and then once Disney bought the Muppets, it's like it all snapped back. Like what's going on with the Muppets? And that was the point where the internet had sort of exploded or was starting to explode. So things like Muppet Wiki and Tough Pigs started existing. So I was able to learn, so much more about the Muppets than, even, watching a TV station completely devoted to the Muppets. So that's just went down that rabbit hole. I built puppets.
Oh wow.
Like I would build, and they're not. I will say they're not great puppets. They're okay.
Oh, stop it. I'm sure they're fine.
Some of them are better than others. But I would have I built a Kermit and a Cookie Monster, and I would take them to like Comic Cons and walk around with them,
Oh wow.
and that's a lot of fun. I haven't done that lately, but that was fun to do back in the day, and that eventually led me to start this Twitter account.
And we will get to that after I briefly say my story. Shall I?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, like I think every Muppet fan, it all starts with Sesame Street and getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning before school and watching it on PBS, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot younger than every guest I've talked to on this podcast, but I'm like the basic age of a lot of people on Muppet Twitter. And
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with the internet. Not always, but like halfway through like my elementary school, that's when internet really started. Um, and so when I was like young, it was like, oh, every week would be a new Muppet video on YouTube or something. And that was really cool to see, and that was really fun to watch. And I grew up with Tough Pigs and the Muppet Wiki. Like I discovered, I had all that information as I was going through all this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a completely different way of growing up than I went through, but it's
Yeah. The though even though I had the Muppet Wiki, there were two books that I took out of the library all the time. One was the big the big book they put out that was Jim's journal, if you know the one I'm talking.
oh, absolutely. I took that one out of my college library. In fact, I didn't get my diploma because of that for 10 years.
Okay, we're gonna put a pin in my story, and we're gonna let you tell whatever that story is for a second.
So I'd taken the book out a bunch of times, and I was getting ready to graduate, and it's like, okay, got to return the book. I can't check it out anymore. So I returned it, but somehow between the Dropbox and wherever the books go after they're in the Dropbox, uh, it disappeared for a period of time. So like you still have the book. I'm like, no, I returned it. And they're like, okay, you'll have to pay for the book because the book's not here. And I ended up, paying for the book, which I really wish that I had just kept and paid for, quite frankly, in hindsight.
Hindsight's
Uh,
pretty.
but for whatever reason, like the billing didn't go through in time to for the ceremony. So when I get there, they do the ceremony. It's like you're graduated, but when you open the little whatever they call it, when you that have the thing that has the diploma inside, open it up and said there's a note that said you will get your diploma once the check clears or something like that.
Right.
And then for some reason the university forgot about it for almost a decade. And then just randomly one day I checked the mail. It's like, hey, it's something from the university that says "Do not bend." It's my diploma. Like I had gotten jobs on the valley on basically just having this piece of paper that said I will get my diploma someday with the university letterhead on it. So years later to finally have that diploma is just you just have to laugh.
Yeah, that is hysterical. And I'm so glad I mentioned that book. But the other book I took out when I was much younger was a book called Jim Henson, the Man Who Played with Puppets.
Hmm.
And it was a children's book, an illustrated book. And I remember reading that book for the first time in like the second or third grade. And I don't have a lot of memories from when I was little, but the one thing I remember was because reading that book was the first time I learned that Jim was no longer with us.
Hmm.
So imagine me in the middle of a third grade reading time starting to cry because
Yeah.
because a man who died like 20 years ago, or what? No, not 20. Wouldn't have, well, whatever. A man who died a long time ago was dead. Man. And so the other good thing about growing up where I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right?
Hmm.
And so that meant I was only a hop skipping away from Sesame Place.
Ah.
You ever been?
I have never been to Sesame Place. I have been to. They have a Sesame Street section at SeaWorld in Orlando now.
Right. Yeah.
It opened a few years back, and I've been there. It's very similar to Sesame Place, I've been told.
Yeah. What I
Only
think.
smaller.
Yeah, only smaller. Sesame Place is really a place that no person over the age of 8 needs to go to.
That's what I've heard.
It's when you know what when you're a little kid, it's really fun, and it's as a Muppet fan as a little kid. I went to Sesame Place more, 3 or 4 more summers than I probably should have, but it was fun while it lasted. It was fun.
Hmm.
But yeah, so as for actual Muppet content, you know, I grew up, there was no streaming and there was no Odyssey Network, but God, I would have killed for an Odyssey Network when I was growing up. Um, there was only 3 seasons of The Muppet Show on DVD, though,
Yep.
which meant I watched those specifically seasons 1 and 2, because I think I got season 3 later. Um, Seasons 1 and 2 I watched all the time, and specifically the pilots I watched all the time.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I kind of just fell into that, and I would read after school. I'd be stuck in the library because of work and stuff for my folks, and so I would read Muppet Wiki for hours, or read Tough Pigs for hours. I
Oh
got
yeah.
there was one time in high school where I got in trouble for going on Tough Pigs instead of doing work in class. You gotta love those moments, though. Uh,
Yeah.
and so let's pick up where you left off. How did what brought you to create your account?
Well, I'd been on Twitter in other capacities for several years up to that point. I'd sort of always wanted to start sort of one of these kind of gimmick accounts because I enjoyed them so much. It seemed like it'd be such a fun thing to do, but I felt like I was coming into it too late. Like it seemed like everything that could exist did exist. There were already, Muppet accounts that, posted, screenshots and videos and, character of the day. And then for some reason, like, I'm like, is there one about GIFs? So I'm searching all over Twitter because I would use GIFs, in my other accounts, to do something. And Muppet GIFs you
Hysterical.
know, are hysterical. The Muppets, for whatever reason, their physical comedy is suited very well to these, short snippets of, physical comedy
They're very
that
gifted.
they are. And sure enough, there had never been a Twitter account dedicated to Muppet GIFs before. So I'm like, well, I'm jumping on that. And it was about the time that the Muppet Show was landing on Disney Plus, and I was excited about that. There was a lot of excitement on the internet about the Muppets as a result of that, and I'm like, there's no better time to do this, and I did it.
So, do you remember what your first GIF of the day was?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It was Fozzie Bear coming through the door in Muppet Family Christmas.
Aw. Watch
It
out
it
that icy patch.
it just seemed like a good way to say, hey, I'm here.
Yeah. And you ended up, well, we'll get into what happened after that, but eventually, once I tell my story, we'll get into what happened after that.
Yeah, we'll
A
get to that.
pretty big part of the family. But first, so I joined Twitter here. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. So my private Twitter, the reason I joined Twitter was to uh, complain about the cats,
Hmm.
not the animal.
Oh, I got it. I know what you mean.
Yeah, which is a really dumb reason to join a social media platform, but
There's probably dumber.
yeah, but that was on my personal account the reason I joined. And then so Muppets No Context has actually my fourth attempt at a gimmick account.
Hmm.
So my very first attempt on a different page was Weezer one word. Because I used to be a huge Weezer fan, unironically, and now I'm a huge Weezer fan, ironically.
Hmm.
That's character development. Um, anyway, and it was a stupid account where I would post not a lyric, but one word of a Weezer song a day. Yeah, I did that for about a week and then forgot about it. Then I also like Nintendo games and Nintendo video games, and there's a lot of back in that day, like back in that day, like it's the olden days. Back then, yeah, there were a lot of for Smash accounts where different accounts would be for certain characters getting into Super Smash Brothers.
Hmm.
And I did a for Smash account for Nestor, who was the mascot of the '80s video game Nintendo Power.
Hmm.
That account also only lasted about a week.
Yeah.
But then I actually had some pretty big success with an account called Should Be Verified, which I ran for a little bit, which was a gimmick account with a very basic premise, basically saying this person should be verified or this person shouldn't be verified, like a very basic thing like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that account, I think, still has more followers than this account I'm using right now. Um, and I used that account for a couple months before I even created this one, and I did use them both for about 3 months. Um, and then I just got really tired of it. I didn't like the gimmick. I only really did it because I thought it was something that would get me popular, which is never. You should never do anything just because you think you're going to be popular off of it.
That is true.
And so I was feeling really down about it, and I was only posting like one thing a month because I was busy with this account, and I had no motivation really. And so I gave it away to another person, and that other person ran the account for 2 or 3 months, but now the account seems pretty dead. So, but I mean, it's still up if you want to go through the backlog. Anybody listening, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a pretty basic account. But in why I was creating that account, and I believe I want to say I forget the month now. I want to say April. Maybe it was March. Was it March or April? I don't remember. Um, I was like, I'm going to create another one, and it's going to be something I actually like doing. And it was not technically this account, because for those of you who don't know, when I started, I was not the Muppets No Context. I was the Muppet Show No Context.
Yep. I remember that.
Um, and before I continue my story, you can continue yours.
All
The
right.
after you put that first post out.
Um. Well, after that, was doing it for a couple of weeks or so, and was going okay. And then around the time that the Muppet Show actually dropped on Disney Plus, uh, I got followed by Tough Pigs, which blew my mind. Like I've been here for like 2 weeks, and I post one GIF a day, but
I
they really loved the concept, and they then a couple of days later they retweeted a couple of my GIFs, and then things started to go off from there. And I'm so grateful for that and have tried to pay it forward with other accounts as well. I love that this community is so we support each other. There's not an ego in here that I have to be the best, I have to be the biggest. It's like, no, we're all in this together. We're all Muppet fans. We all want to share each other's stuff.
we all want to we all that's what I'm saying. We all need to screw what the movie image says. We all need to team up together and perform a heist to steal Tamanella Grinderfall.
Uh,
No, I agree that this community is just so nice, and there's been, I mean, I've said this, in tweets and stuff, but like, there are so many people who I want to meet them so I can give them a firm handshake for everything they've done for me. You're one of them. I mean, you've been so nice to me personally through this
oh,
whole
thank you.
whole thing. But anyway,
Well,
so yeah,
happy to do it.
I posted the Muppet Show stuff, and slowly but surely, I got up there and I was posting things, and I remember one of the very first times a post of mine went off. I was doing a themed week all about Gonzo, and one of my Gonzo tweets got a lot of got like 100 likes, which nowadays, even now 100 likes is a lot for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I was just thrilled, and then you know, I kept gaining followers, and then all of a sudden in my inbox I see Muppet Wiki has followed you, and I'm like, the Muppet Wiki,
Oh
the
yeah.
Muppet. Well, that was a tough pick. I don't remember Tough Picks following me. They do, but I don't remember the day that happened. Um, so that was just a crazy moment, and then I've had. We can brag. This is a safe space to brag. There's been some cool stuff that's happened. Skipping ahead, one of my tweets was retweeted by Luis Gold, which I will never stop thinking about.
Yep. And
Um,
gosh, I'm trying to think what my coolest retweet is from like a Muppet person. It's I think I got one retweeted by Matt Vogel once.
oh,
It was one that Tough Pigs retweeted, and then he must have retweeted their retweet.
that's
So I think it was the one where it was the day after Kermit was on The Masked Singer, so it was a GIF of that appearance, like less than 24 hours after it had happened.
that's an honor. That's an honor.
That blew my mind. And I'd only been doing it for like maybe 2 months at that point, and I'm like, and Matt Vogel just retweeted me.
That's a high I would ride for a couple of years. um. So, but yeah, I got a lot of success, and then eventually, what happened with my switching over from the Muppet Show to practically everything Muppets, and so with me, I will not touch Sesame Street, and I won't touch anything the Jim Henson Company still owns.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you limit yourself to?
uh, Broadly, there's a few limits I have. One is that if they're in the Muppet Family Christmas, they're Muppets. So any of the Muppet Show, Sesame Street, or Fraggles are good to go. Anything that has like that's Kermit hosts it, like so Emmett Otter and Christmas Toy and things like that, and then or things that were on the Jim Henson Hour, like Dog City that Rolf was in. So if that has some sort of connection to the Muppets through something like that, I count that.
Mm-hmm.
And also Bear in the Big Blue House, because that's technically owned by the Muppet Studios, because they bought that with the rest of the Muppets from Henson.
Right.
So those are generally uh, my parameters.
So
So as wide a net of Muppets as I can get without saying that's not a Muppet. That Dark Crystal, that's not a Muppet.
here's my question: does Happy Time Murders count?
If it did, I don't see it being something.
Appropriate?
Well, I don't know if I'd say it's not appropriate. I'm sure there's something that I would probably post if there was, or but I don't really want to.
Have you seen that
Is
movie?
the gist? I have not, because I've not seen it.
Don't.
I don't really have plans to see it.
I saw. You want to know how much of a ride or die I am? I saw that in the theaters
Wow.
with my mom.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a big.
that must have been an interesting experience.
Yeah, don't take your mom to see that movie, kids. And also, don't see that movie. It's not good. Uh, You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was just double checking. Sometimes my internet sucks. Anyway, so I was doing the Muppet Show thing for a while, and then Christmas came up,
Mm-hmm.
and so the Muppet Show is great for Halloween clips. There's plenty of creepy monsters, plus Vincent Price and Alice Cooper. There's content for Valentine's Day and St. Patty's Day and Thanksgiving. Like there's plenty of stuff to touch on, right? Not a whole lot Christmas themed.
Yeah, they never did a Christmas episode of the Muppet Show. I know they did a million Christmas specials outside of it, but there's
Right.
not an episode of the Muppet Show itself that's about Christmas.
And so, excuse me. The only Christmassy things on the Muppet Show is one time they sang "Sweet Gingerbread Man." There's a
Mm.
weird song where there's a medley between Christmas and Fourth of July songs, which is one of the funniest bits on the show. And then Miss Piggy sings "Baby It's Cold Outside." That's not a whole lot to work with for the entire month of December.
Yeah.
So for that month, I changed my account to no context Jim Henson Christmas specials, which is a lot to say, but I basically gave myself access to the entire Henson library, Sesame Street, Jim Henson Company, the Muppets, everything. And let me tell you, it was so freeing.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll be honest, 70% of my posts were just me posting weird clips from the 278 Sesame Street Christmas specials. Because those, even the good one, they're both wild.
Oh yeah.
They're both wild. And this year, since I am General Muppets now, I'll probably not change. I'll probably just like, all right, this month I'm only pulling from Christmas Carol and Family Christmas and you know, whatever. But it was so freeing, and so I went back to the Muppet Show briefly, and then I put it out as a poll because I do want to give credit where credit's due. There was an old Muppets No Context
Mm-hmm.
who hasn't posted in like 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think I had liberty to take that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I became the Muppets No Context, and I remember the very first thing I posted under that new umbrella is still my most liked tweet today,
Mm.
and it was Kermit the Frog in the Great Muppet Caper saying, it's amazing. Everything you said is wrong. And not a word of it was right. Do you remember what your most liked thing was?
Oh gosh, what is my most? I think it's. Is it still Uncle Traveling Matt getting licked by a dog? I think that's might be what it is. I think that got like 2,000 likes or something.
I mean, it's adorable. That's so
Oh yeah,
random.
I know. But I'll take it.
Yeah, well, we'll take it. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. After about 5 days after my transfer, I tweeted a tweet that would change the course of Muppet Twitter forever.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a Muppet Twitter award show? And history was made. I should have introduced you as Muppy nominee.
That is
Uh,
true. I am a Muppy nominee.
we both lost though, so don't feel
We
bad.
did.
We did. Darn you, Shane.
I don't mind losing to him though.
No, I don't. I kid. The Muppet Twitter Awards was a blast. That was so much fun. Were you there that night?
Oh, I was there.
I gotta get you
Here's
to.
the thing that I don't think I wasn't set to be a presenter, but I was there because I was nominated. And
You'll
in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't win because I did not know I had to turn my microphone on, so I would not have you would not have been able to hear me. I just would have like ducked out and ducked in, and I'd be like, "What's with that guy?"
we'll have you present next year. Don't worry, if you want to, of course.
Oh, sure.
Um, No, the Muppet Twitter Awards was a really fun night. It's still up to listen to. You also you've been on a couple different things. You were recently on an episode of Muppet Profiles.
Was I yet?
Did that come out yet? I think it did.
I don't think it has.
Oh,
I'll have to double check, but I was.
what episode did you record?
Mine's gonna be Fozzie Bear.
I don't know. It did not come out yet. Wait, did it? No, no, no. They were last
Something
time
to look forward to.
you were a guest on their podcast at some point, so it'll be out eventually.
It's been recorded. It just hasn't been released yet.
Yes. Pardon me. I should do more research next time.
No problem.
But listen to that when that comes out. And
It
you,
was a lot of fun to do, by the way. So
yeah,
I hope it's a lot of fun to listen to.
yeah. My episode has been released, so
Yep.
I know how fun that is. Oops. Uh, we're good. And then you also, I want to thank you again. You helped me out with the Hall of Fame.
I did. Yes. That was I was there to induct Matt Vogel into the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame. And yeah, there's a Hall of Fame now too. That was also something I created.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running out of ideas. And that's why we have this podcast.
Yes.
But so before we wrap it up, any other thoughts on Muppet Twitter as a whole? Any other people you want to thank, or any other things you want to say? Any other stories you have of this time?
Well, one thing that I definitely wanted to take some time to thank is all of the people out there who make GIFs, because about 3 or 4 of them, every week that I post are stuff that I make, but that leaves 3 or 4 more slots to fill. So I know Muppet Wiki is incredibly prolific in making GIFs. Uh, I know Muppet Profiles has made a bunch of GIFs as well. Gosh, I know I'm gonna forget people.
Muppet Turgy? They make
Muppeturgy, yes, they make so many GIFs per episode to put in their show notes, and so like every like Muppet Show sketch up to the point that they've gotten to in their podcast, you can just go, okay, but there's got to be a GIF of it because they've done it. And just all of the other people who have just made GIFs over the years. The Fozzie doing the face palm, Kermit flailing his arms in the air.
they're
I
iconic.
I couldn't do this every day without all of the people who've so generously contributed those GIFs to the Twitter GIF library. So thank you to all of you for
Well,
doing that.
if we're thanking people, I also need to thank Muppet Wiki because that's where all of my photos come from, more or less. I mean, videos come from random whoever posts them on YouTube, but
Mm-hmm.
Muppet Wiki is just they have so much there, and like it's great. It's great. So thank you, Muppet.
They're an incredible resource. I know I use them all the time to try to figure out, okay, what Muppet projects are having anniversaries. Like for example, today is the anniversary of the Muppet movie.
Yep.
So I've because I went to Muppet Wiki at one point and made a spreadsheet of all of the the release dates and all that kind of stuff
That's my
from
other.
from there to so I know when to do that kind of stuff, and I'll usually link back to them, you
Right.
know, to say, hey, the reason I know this is because I'm up at Wiki. Go to them.
That's my other thing, and I meant to bring this up earlier, but I guess we can do it now. How do you choose what you post every day?
It depends on the day. Like for example, when there's like an anniversary, it's
Right.
really or a holiday. Obviously I'm going to post a Christmas thing on Christmas or something like that.
Right.
But for any other day, it really comes down to what haven't I posted recently.
I,
Have I posted a Grover in the last few weeks? No, I should do that.
have I
And
have I touched anything outside of anything after 2000? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Find a clip from the ABC series.
Yeah, and also, try to feel. I try to feel, what the general mood of that day is to a certain degree.
Mm,
So
what
like
twit?
both on like a macro level, like you're not gonna put like I'm having the best day of my life on a Monday morning. People aren't gonna
No.
be too into that. People aren't gonna relate to that. So it's like now post Oscar on Monday morning. People feel like that. I feel like that on Monday mornings.
Yeah.
And then on a different level, like if something is in the news, or if something's was, or if like a project was just announced, or something's become a meme that's going around.
Rocco.
You keep an eye.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, you keep an eye on all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm posting this a month from now, and it stays there. And sometimes you're like, I'm posting this tomorrow, and you change it 5 minutes before
Mm-hmm.
you posted. So it's very, there's a lot of intuition that goes into it. Just like, this is what feels right for today.
Side tangent. The Elmo versus Rocco thing is going to haunt the Muppet fan community for decades.
It probably will. Although I haven't heard anybody outside the Muppet fan community like even talk about it recently.
It's going to be one of those
I
internet.
mean, I'm sure if I check the comments on any Elmo post on his Twitter, like on the Elmo Twitter account, there's probably people mentioning it, but I don't see it as much anymore. It's gone quiet for now, but I'm sure it'll.
Good luck to whoever runs Muppet Award winning account at Elmo. I don't.
Yeah.
Neither of us have a Muppet, but the stupid rock hater does. Uh, well, yeah, no, I kind of just do the same thing. I do post last minute all the time. I've never planned a single post I've ever made. Uh,
Really?
yeah,
Wow. I
this is
couldn't do that.
this is
I
an
need my spreadsheet.
this is an empire built off Jenga bricks. It's going to collapse and bite me one day, but we'll deal with that when we get there. Um, One more thing I do want to say is before we do our wrap ups and our plugs and our goodbyes, I would like to quickly shout out all the other wonderful Muppet gimmick accounts on this app. Uh, Notably, off the top of my head, one Muppetational Shot, uh, Muppet Quote of the Day, obviously the big, I don't know if gimmick's not the right word, but the big boys like Tough Pigs and Muppet Wiki and Muppet History, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other ones like No Context Jim Henson, No Context Sesame Street Screams is I think one. Um, uh, Muppet of the Day, Daily Muppet, which are two different accounts that are
Yep.
both um all the different there's Daily Wembley Fraggle and Daily Moki Fraggle and all those different accounts. All the parody accounts, of course, like the Wonderful Bad Hudson Bio or Puppet Comedy Facts from Swamp TV. All the bot accounts, I love Muppet Twitter is basically what I'm saying.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
100% agree.
thanks Muppet Twitter. All right, Sam, this has been really fun. Anything you would like to plug?
Um well, I mean, my account, Gifts of Puppets, Muppet Gift of the Day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, another project that I work on is I have a blog about theme parks, mostly Disney World, but I do post about others sometimes at inkandpaintintheparks.wordpress.com. I do post stuff about the Muppets there sometimes, and I have a project that's Muppet related that will probably be getting posted next month that I'm a little excited about. So keep an eye out for that.
I'm very excited. I have no idea what that is, but I'm excited now.
Uh, and I also have a personal um, Twitter account at ESSAEEM or at SAM, uh, spelled out phonetically. And then I have an Instagram and all that kind of stuff too, and you can get to links to that, from my other accounts. But that's my main things right now.
As for me, if you want to follow an account I no longer post to and don't even own anymore, you can follow at should be very. Uh, Um, I have an Instagram. I don't post there anymore. It's still Muppet No. You can follow that if you'd like. Please go back and listen to the previous episodes of this podcast. This is episode 4. We've had some pretty good episodes so far. Shouting out a friend of both mine and Sam's. Listen to Muppet Profiles, the whole series. They've got like 20 episodes if you need a good Muppet podcast to listen to. And in fact, if you need, here, real quick, muppetturgy, Kermitmit, Muppet History Podcast, Muppet Fans Talking, Muppetsational, Moving Right Along, Hubba Wah, Fraggle Talks. Those are all great podcasts. Listen to all of them.
Absolutely.
Listen to and there's more that I've missed, probably, but listen to all of them. If you haven't already, Muppet Hall of Fame and Muppet Twitter Awards are still on YouTube. Watch those if you want to. Currently, we are running a mini poll for the Muppet Twitter Awards called Muppet Twitter Awards Present the Muppet Twitter Song of the Summer. I don't know if anybody's seen that. We're going to be running a little contest to see what Muppet Twitter's Song of the Summer is for this year. Nominations are live right now where you can nominate songs, and then starting in I think 2 weeks we're going to have voting open. And then this is my first time announcing this. On August 12th, you will join me live on Twitter Spaces as I do a radio show where I will play the top 10 songs and count down to number 1, the song of the summer.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my new project. I'm going to be hosting Twitter Spaces radio show. That's going to go horribly, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, Sam, thank you so much for being on the podcast to discuss Muppet gimmick stuff with me. I promise I will have you back at some point to talk about a random Muppet thing, if that's all right with you.
That's just fine with me. Thank you for having me. It was fun to be here.
It was fun to be seen. And I remembered to cue up my exit music this time.
Very good.
But we're changing our exit music. It's a new thing, and it's well, I really like it. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time live from Muppet Land.